All right. Life extension, immortality. Last episode, we talked about death. Now we're kind of following the same theme, but kind of in reverse. To preface kind of the conversation about life extension, I want to kind of look at two ways that it's like possible in terms of kind of like the overall philosophy and science is that one is like changing the body as it's like going on and adapting to its environment or preventing it in any case to be changed by its environment. There's different technologies out there. We have manipulating proteins, xenobots, which are like synthetic life forms that are designed like by computers to perform a desired function by combining biological tissues. You have genome therapies or solutions, and DNA injections for different types of things because the body develops free radicals over time, and that's kind of like the main thing that this is going to be scientific, but there's telomeres on the end of the DNA, and over time they do get broken down and they unravel. So preventing that from happening, I think those are kind of the two ways that we could actually uh, have life extension technology. What do you think about that?
Welcome back to the Deep Plea. My name is Karthik. The guy on the other side of the mic is Sven.
Yo yo.
Today we're talking about living forever or longevity, or maybe not even living forever, but just the idea of longevity as
Yeah.
a whole. So, what you said about adapting, humans always adapting. There was
Hmm.
this study conducted in 2020. I'll try and put the name on it on the screen, and it was trying to kind of do this idea in mice. So what they did is they transferred young blood to uh, older mice, and it was able to help cure blindness in that older mice. So the young blood had some special properties. Maybe Sven knows a little bit more, but
Hmm.
it had some special properties, and it was able to reverse the loss of sight, right? So
Yeah.
similarly, if humans, right, if we're able to reverse old age, I mean, there's a question that people get asked, and they say, would you rather have the body of a 30-year-old for the last 60 years of your life, or would you have the mind of a 30-year-old for the last 60 years of your life? Everybody
Hmm.
always says body, right? Because that body is, I don't know, it seems more of a symbol of immortality. Maybe I'm going even on the
Yeah.
wrong path, but usually that's what they say. And like if
Right.
I get to old age and I start to lose my vision and I get some young blood, let's say of a, we're not going to talk about the ethics of this, but young blood
Yeah.
of like, let's say a baby, right? And it helps cure my
Right.
blindness, then okay, I might be able to live longer, right? I might not get whether that be run over by a car or whatever it might be.
Hmm.
And okay, if my body keeps staying at its tip top shape, maybe we can forget about the mind for now. But if the body keeps staying at the tip top shape, well, then we might be talking about living longer than I think maybe the world record is 120 years.
Yeah.
Um, and then your second point about kind of constituting this natural selection or maybe artificial selection of a
Hmm.
human that could possibly just be immune to all changes in its environment. I don't
Hmm.
know about that one in particular. Maybe you have a bit more, but it seems like the first instance, like fixing something that's broken, seems
Hmm.
easier. Fixing and updating something that could be broken at certain points seems a lot easier than making something of perfection, right? Humans
Right.
don't make any invention that human has made is not a perfection. So
Yeah.
I think even to make like the perfect, screw, right? Still,
Hmm.
rusts, gets old. It's not immortal. So I think even something as trivial as that is not immortal. Therefore, how can the idea of a human be such a thing when a human is so complicated?
Yeah, it's interesting because you're right in the terms of like the preventative measures are they have to be perfect because things could always come up to maybe a different bacteria comes along and now we have to figure out ways to fix that and because now we have to figure it out that means that there was an infiltration in our perfect design that was unforeseen. The idea of adapting over time in terms of longevity is interesting because it comes from the or it comes up to the brain. So you could replace the heart, you can replace limbs, you can replace arteries and all this stuff. Once it gets to the brain, then you have the mind and body problem. You have are is this person actually who they are? You because eventually over time the brain is going to deteriorate, and as you start kind of plugging in the holes with technology in that brain as time goes on, you're kind of taking away like who that person is, and you're kind of augmenting them into what might be half computer, half human, whatever it is, and then you take away humanity as a whole. You take away like who they are. So I think that is the one thing that stops the idea of um, 3D printing organs and all this stuff. I think that kind of diminishes that because when it comes to the brain, you wouldn't have the same person. So that's why I think that the preventative, although it has to be perfect, would be the best bet. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I have a few things. So,
Yeah.
first of all, there's an idea, or not an idea, but it's a funny quote. You may have heard it from Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So we can have this intricate plan to make this perfect organ or this perfect human, or even we can have this intricate plan to get a perfect score on our test, our exam. But when we actually get there and we get to the scene of the crime or the
Hmm.
scene of the future crime that's about to incur because we haven't studied or because we didn't foresee this one possible event, then we'll see what actually happens, right?
Yeah.
We'll see how your longevity holds up, right?
You're right.
And I don't know
Yeah.
too much about 3D printing like organs and stuff, but it's just like, okay, the 3D printing is supposed to be something of perfection, let's say, right? Because
Yeah.
the needle moves so thinly and everything like that, right?
Sure.
But can we really like make a solid judgment, I don't know, based on what a machine's quote unquote deterministic output is? And even if that output is deterministic, well, we're still dealing with other things such as if you're 3D printing, you're to be dealing with, the environment, the air, I don't know,
True.
something else, right? The machinery that, okay, the program you wrote might be perfect, but what if the machine is not and it can't do it? And
Yeah.
also, we're talking about all this longevity stuff. We're talking about
Hmm.
how it could be possible, but there's this idea from Seneca. Seneca is a Stoic figure from the Roman Empire, and something he says is, "No man can have a peaceful life who thinks too much about lengthening it." So
Hmm.
if we're always looking to squeeze the most out of our life, me and Sven had a little conversation before this, and I was saying, okay, if we spend time to try and increase our time later, well, aren't we spending our time that we have now, the only time that is guaranteed, in order to fight for something that isn't guaranteed in the future?
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
something as uh, non-trivial as immortality, perhaps the one of the most complicated problems to ever exist.
Right.
Um, yeah, go for it. I'll pass it
Yeah. I
back to
mean, it definitely takes a mature brain to be able to kind of like realize like when that point is where they're going to be like, okay, now I'm going to do the thing I should be doing. I guess the question is like, if you feel like you have all the time in the world, are you ever going to like even want to go to that point? That also kind of made me think about the implications that this technology would have in society, in particular in terms of violence. I was actually thinking, because of that thought process, would there be more or less violence? You know what I mean? So it's like, how would we view ourselves and how we view society based on the idea of living either for a longer time or forever? And I think that the idea that there is going to be a death gives people a moral compass, and it gives people something to kind of think like, I should do the right thing. Because if you think that you're going to live forever or live for a long time, you might have the foresight of thinking, okay, I can make what's the term, amends for these things, or I can somehow change these outcomes in the future and make it so it's justified or it's right. So there is a lot to be said about how people can kind of have this immature mindset of now is now, so I'll do kind of what I want, and then I'll try and figure it out later. And a lot of us as kids, even though it's an underdeveloped mind, we do this. There's even adults who think that, okay, like maybe I'm 30 or 40 now, but when I'm like 50 or 60, I'll have healthy habits so I don't die early. When really what you do in your 30s and 40s is going to directly impact your health at 50, 60. In fact, let's say you smoke cigarettes or whatever, you could actually end it much sooner. But you think that you have that time on your hands. You're kind of oblivious to the fact that the moment you're telling yourself you'll figure out in the future is actually the moment in which it counts the most. What you're doing counts the most. And so I definitely think the foresight of how people would behave and kind of think about this would still be skewed even with the knowledge that we have today. I still think it's easy to kind of fall back on this idea that things, you can do things now and change it later. I mean, yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, if we're given the opportunity to, let's say the average lifespan is 150,
Yeah,
and let's say youth, for example, is up to 50 years old, right? So
sure.
up to 50 years old, you're kind of like a 20-year-old, let's say. Then that will encourage you to not be good today, but say, oh, I'll be good tomorrow, or I'll be
Yeah,
good in X amount of years when I'm actually starting to get older and when the time of being good is behind you, right?
right.
So, because it's natural, we don't look
Yeah.
towards the future. If I told you your future ends tomorrow, then you would say, okay, let me drop my whether that be my gaming computer, or let me drop my
Hmm.
YouTube, or let me drop X and Y and everything else. Let me just go spend time with the people that I care about.
Yeah,
Or let me try and be a good person, right?
right.
Or like you would say, oh, I need to watch some more YouTube, or I mean, for me, it's YouTube, but for all of you, it might be YouTube, it might be something else. But I mean, you're watching this video, so
Yeah.
you're contributing to not being good, so go be good. No,
Just no, just kidding.
hopefully
This
you're
is
being good.
informational. This is
Hopefully,
informational.
hopefully this is good content. But
Yeah.
anyways, like I want to make a transition
Hold on,
to
before you do
okay,
that real quick.
okay, you go, you go.
I There was just one good thing or one interesting concept I
Yeah.
wanted to mention is that there's a question. It says, if you would you rather wake up tomorrow or have $1 billion today for 24 hours?
Hmm.
Men, I would say most people would say I'd rather wake up tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then we will wake up tomorrow, but we won't pretend or act like we had $1 billion, even though we valued waking up in the morning to be worth more than $1 billion. And so it's kind of this idea that even though we know something, we can't feel it, or like we have an issue kind of feeling that way. And I know there
Mm.
are people out there that wake up and they are genuinely, something in their life made them really get into this mindset. They are genuinely thankful and they feel like $1 million, or hopefully at least they kind of recognize that waking up was worth 1 million. Like genuinely they do it. And I just think that I wonder if it would take, how long it would take for someone to get into that state of mind given a certain amount of years of life. If they were 200
Mm.
years in, would they
Okay.
still think that way? Maybe 300, would they still think that way? It's a good change for everybody, but I was just thinking that would be interesting.
Yeah, what is everyone's tipping point when they value their, well, let me paraphrase what you said. When they value their next day more than the rewards of the current day? Is that
Right.
a decent term? Okay. Okay. Just wanted to make sure I was on the right track.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to take a quick segue into we talked a lot about longevity for humans, but I want to give this idea about longevity for science. So something I wrote down was we have these different like theorems, for example. Like we have the Pythagorean theorem, we have the Darwinian theory of evolution.
Mhm.
Things that have stood, I mean, I think people argue about Darwin, but let's just say
Yeah.
Pythagorean. Pythagorean stood for so long, it has this longevity in the sense that it's true for the certain situation, the certain outcome.
Yeah.
And some problems may be unsolvable in that they have this longevity to be kind of impossible,
Hmm.
or they have this, I don't know, like nature to be disproved rather than proved. So
Sure.
maybe the longevity is in this sense like a longevity of death, right? So,
Yeah.
for example, when I guess I can relate this back to the human, when our theory of life, right, where we're into this life, when it ends, then our longevity now becomes the absence of our life. Um,
Yeah.
but anyways, what do you think about
Yeah.
the longevity of science, Sven, and like different theories
Yeah.
and how these
Hmm.
things emerge or how they kind of constructed and thought about in today's world?
Yeah. I think an interesting idea is that so right now we have I forget exactly when it comes to physics and it comes to like quantum mechanics and all these things, we have figured out certain forces and how they interact with each other. And a lot of times we're seeing now that there's going to be this question mark element, this question mark, I should say, force that we haven't yet figured out. So now we're doing all this research to figure out. I think I saw an article like 2 years ago. It was like scientists are approaching, reaching like the fifth force of like something like within quantum mechanics. And I think it just kind of paints this picture in my head of like we're probably so far away from actually like getting to anything that's like a good holistic view of what their universe on the quantum scale actually is. So I'm thinking the idea that longevity in science, is it going to be something that in terms of the idea of the universe being infinite, is it something that you just figure out the next thing, the next thing, the next thing? Wait, oh, I thought my power went out,
Oh,
but my computer
hey,
just shut off because I had it on long enough.
oh,
Sorry.
okay.
My monitor like shut off. Um, so you have the next thing. I don't think that I mean, if the universe, for example, like had we figured out the fifth force, the sixth force, and we kept going on and on and on, it would take the whole holistic understanding of the universe in order to understand it. The thing is, a lot of people would say that that would be the answer of life or the universe, like figuring out the truth about how everything works.
hmm
So it's like, do you reach the ultimate answer of the universe? Like, is that something that actually happens, or is it something that it just goes on and on as an exponential, just
Okay,
going
yeah.
up and up and up until you get to that closest point, but it's still trillions of points away.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like this
Sure.
idea of always getting closer, and I don't know if that's going to come to an end. But if it does, that would be. I feel like I don't know if there's more universes out there, but that would be really cool if humans did figure out the answer to the universe. That's just me.
Yeah, if they figure out one problem, then the rest unravel.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so if
Or
they've,
it gets more complicated.
well, maybe. Like if they make one heart and it performs well, have they solved everything or have they solved nothing?
Well, in terms of the cardiovascular system, you mean? Like a heart?
Well, like this life extension, let's say, right? So if I
Oh,
substitute your heart for one I made, and I
yeah.
made this heart, this new heart, let's say, have I solved everything or have I solved nothing? Because I'm only at this, I've only done one thing for,
I would
I've
say
only
that
done one
you
thing.
have yeah, I would say that you solved the blood flow problem. I wouldn't say that you
Okay,
solved
okay.
the immune response issue that's going to come up eventually. I wouldn't say that you solved the lack of neurochemicals in the brain for adapting and responding to your environment. But I would say that there was a big breakthrough in the fact that because circulation is what is required for those other things I just mentioned to be possible. So it's 100% necessary to solve that in order for those other things to happen. So it's not even like one step that you did. It's like it was required. It was completely necessary, and
Mhm.
that is a huge deal. And then it comes the next, which is going to be the supply of the immune system, the lymphatic system, digestion, whatever it is. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I don't have anything else actually. I would ask one, I want to end on a final question, but I don't, did you have
Okay.
anything else to add
Um,
or talk about?
I did. I mean, it's not really something we have to talk about, but I was thinking, would religion be more powerful or obsolete, or would it be the
Oh,
same?
I think that's a good final question, actually. Let's roll with
Yeah.
that. I guess to answer that, let's see. If let's say humans were uh if humans had their life lengthened or had their life to be infinite. One what?
Um, I guess the more interesting version would be immortality. But I guess if you kind of have an idea for either or, you could. I mean, I don't know. It's
Or
just
even one Hinduism a sect
Yeah.
of Hinduism, one person had said, I forget exactly how he said it, but since you cannot make blood, right, you lose basically. Like,
Interesting. Yeah,
or
that's
like,
true.
yes, yes. So
Yeah.
let's say you can make blood
Yeah.
in our example today, then this guy would be wrong, and
True.
that would mean that certain foundational structures of the religion maybe wouldn't be broken or torn down, but they would be, disfigured in a way, or they'd have some
Well,
cracks.
blood would still be made though, right?
No, no, no. I'm saying the like religious pillars maybe would
Oh,
be
oh,
like
oh, I
would
see.
have some cracks, or the
Sure.
foundation perhaps may, I don't want to say subside, like go away, but it could still
Hmm.
be there, but there might be like a little counter argument. But
Yeah.
also, like, I think just when you make, like, depends what scale we're talking on, but just when you make blood, I don't know if
Mm.
everyone would be like, oh, we should quit or something. Or, I mean, maybe if
Yeah.
you talk immortality, then I would ask the question, what happens when I shoot you in the head?
Right. Well, then we can think about altered carbon, where you just have like your chip in a database, and they'll just put you
They
in a
just
new
put you in
body.
a new human? Okay, this
Yeah.
dude's living in a freaking utopia. Actually, it's a freaking dystopia at this point. But okay, what do you have to say to
Yeah.
answer the question?
So I was thinking, the idea of, so every, we talked about this in the past. Every new kind of generation or era, us as human beings, we adapt and we live within that kind of framework. So I think that it's easy to say, for example, if immortality was a thing, for people to be like, "Oh, God now gave us the gift of immortality. This is
Mm,
because of God,"
okay.
right? And or we can extend life right now for a certain period of time because God wants us to do that.
Sure,
This
sure.
is what's required. So I think no matter what, it's easy, because I will say that something like God or religion isn't something that you can measure or like scientifically uh, kind of portray as something. You could just kind of use faith and just say, I think this is why this is the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
So at any point, someone could say this happened, whether it's good or bad, as a blessing or as a curse or whatever it may be.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
interesting.
I think that could go on forever.
Like you're saying people could just argue whether stuff is a blessing or a curse. Or,
Right, because it comes down to faith. Otherwise, we would have either
yes,
proven or disproven. So it has to be faith always. It's
true.
either one.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's
I
like
think,
even something
well,
like people like they could go through something horrible and they could just say, "Oh, I just had this horrible thing happen to me, but I think God's testing me." Or I just had this
oh,
really
yeah,
great thing
yeah,
happen to
yeah,
me,
yeah.
but
That's
I
totally
think it's a
fair.
blessing.
That's totally
You know what
fair.
I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah. I mean, even in my
So I think
life,
if you
it's like, even in yours,
right,
probably,
yeah,
it's the same thing.
sure.
Whether it's God
Yeah,
or
so
whether
I
it's
just
just like, the universe or whatever it might be.
yeah. I will say there real quick before we end. There was I had my like when I had my first clinical day. My favorite weather is like rain and fog.
Mm.
It was raining and fogging, and today I had like this like Survivor Day thing where we had to perform all our skills in front of the faculty. It was like also a foggy and rainy today. Not anywhere in between those days was it the weather that I like, except for those 2 days. So I was just like, is the
Okay.
universe trying to say something to me? Like,
Bro sees showers. He's like, oh, I'm being showered with love. It's game over. I love it.
yeah,
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I think that's a great place to
yeah.
end this conversation.
Let us know
Longevity,
what you
bro.
think.
That's crazy,
Yeah.
dude. That's
I
crazy.
know. Yeah, it's real too. I think the technology is really coming. I think it'll eventually hit. It'll be it'll be a thing.
I have my doubts. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll
I'm not the
see.
one doing research, anyways. So, and also maybe there's a freaking secret government safe house that I don't know about. And
Never know.
they're just creating people. They're just sending
Cloning.
NPCs into the world, bro. Of course, bro. All right.
Solipsism is just us. All right.
Thank you,
See you
everyone.
guys.
Peace.
See ya.